I want to talk to you about a more light-hearted type of story. Not inherently positive in any way, shape, or form, but just, lighter. So if you have a smartphone, you probably have some games on that smartphone. And my guess is you didn't pay for those smartphone games, right? A lot of the times you download those smartphone games for free. And when you do that, you essentially get a free-to-play experience. Now, that free-to-play experience may come with some detriments, right? You may have to watch ads, you may have limited features, there may be a premium version of whatever app or game that you downloaded. But you can, essentially, you're getting a demo of something that in theory you can upgrade and make better. On phones, this seems to make sense. Many people are transfer phones often, and back in and a couple of years ago, it was difficult to transfer games between one device to another because not all the games were compatible with the newest operating systems, and the software changes so quickly, and it just becomes difficult to get games to hold on to games for a long time, and because of that, it made it difficult to sell them for money, right? So people were very comfortable not paying for these games. Okay, so kind of makes sense the way that it's done on mobile phones. However, those of you who have consoles or are PC gamers may have noticed that there's a surprising and perhaps worrying trend about video games in general. There are starting to be a large emergence of free plus games. So what does that mean? So that little plus is a little deceptive. So it's called in-app purchases. And if you have smartphone games, I'm sure you're aware of what these are. But if you're not, essentially it says you can play the base game for free. But there will be certain things in the game that you are not allowed to access or that require you to pay money to get. Now, oftentimes, and in the games that I think are best designed, these, what are called microtransactions, essentially payments for little things in games, revolve things that don't fundamentally change the way the game works. Things like how your character or characters look, what type of home they can have, what aesthetics, things that don't affect gameplay. But there are also games that do require you to purchase these game-changing things, and that kind of becomes problematic, and it allows for what's called pay to win. So you must be thinking at this point, why is Ben talking about this? This clearly is not a worker issue. The reason I bring this up, so E3, the gaming conference, was recently, and there were a bunch of articles written about it before it happened and during it happened. And one of those articles talked a little bit about that the gaming market was moving towards free-to-play games and away from your traditional $30, $60 PC or console game. But actually, I'm actually here to refute that. I'm here to argue that that's not true. So the reason I don't think that's true is because, let me take a step back. Why would people want to play games for free and then buy things on the back end, or rely on other people buying things on the back end to make it work? One might be that the quality of games hasn't increased that much, and the price of games increases fairly regularly. When I was younger, when I bought my first PC game, the cost of the game was $30. And that was like, for a complete game, you didn't have to add anything. It had a fleshed out single player campaign. Sometimes it even had multiplayer, but multiplayer was spotty because you were relying on the host's internet connection. Everyone remembers their Halo 2 days, right? Where essentially there were no central servers or dedicated servers. There were just you and your console was having everyone else join onto your console. They were connected to you over the internet, and they played essentially for as long as your internet could handle them. But games started to move to a model where multiplayer became king. Single-player games began to fade, and companies began to optimize the multiplayer existence by allowing for people to play on dedicated servers. But these servers cost them money, and if you buy a game only once, then you only give them that injection of money one time. So the oldest game that I can think of that actually relied on this subscriber model is World of Warcraft, which, by the way, was incredibly popular and continues to be incredibly popular to this day. The subscription model has never hurt them, and that game gets you both ways because you have to buy the physical game, oftentimes a set of discs, and any expansions that come with it, and you have to pay, I might be dating myself with this number, but $15 a month to play it. It might be more now. But, okay, so we're moving to a subscription-based model, but all this costs money, right? And it's more money than games used to cost. And so people are, games have improved a lot, that's true, but perhaps people haven't been able to keep up with the incredible cost of gaming, whether that is through DLCs or through, other types of content, subscription services, what have you. And I've talked about the issues with subscription services in the past, but I think games can be a little different. It kind of depends. But again, the reason I'm talking about this is because I want to talk about kind of a larger economic shift. So while games are getting more expensive, you know what else is happening? Wages are not increasing. People are not actually making that much more money than they did when a game was $30 or $15. Okay? So if the cost of games, and by the way, games, this is an allegory really for what's happening with all markets, where the prices of things are getting higher, and the cost of living is getting higher, and the amount of money that people are bringing in is generally staying the same or going down, right? So all this time, entertainment, games are getting more expensive to buy and to play because you either need a subscription, or you need to buy the DLC, or you need to buy the cosmetic, or you need the new gun, or whatever it's going to be. That all costs money. But if you're not bringing in any more money, that feels like an incredible cost to you. It feels like the cost of video games are going up at a faster rate than you can afford. And so if you see a game that's free, well, the obvious choice is, well, this game doesn't require me to pay a ton of money to play it, so I should play the free game. So it makes it look like the gaming market is moving towards free-to-play games. But actually, I think the better lesson to take from this shift is actually games are becoming too expensive for the limited resources that individuals and workers have. So they're reverting to free games because we're just poor. We're just too broke to keep up with the next biggest flashy game, or we don't buy as many games as we used to because we're worked harder, we don't have as much time on our hands, we're working multiple jobs, we don't have as much money as we should have by this point in our lives if you're a millennial like me, or you just don't have a ton of money generally because wages have been stagnant or declining. So I'm using this segment and using video games in general to push back on a trend generally in the economy where the prices of the things that we need and that we enjoy are going up. But the cost of employing us, of keeping us alive, from the employer's perspective, is either staying the same or going down. If our wages were higher, if we made more money, if we had more disposable income, if we had more disposable time, then we probably wouldn't be shifting to free-to-play games with these expansions. We would probably just buy regular games. But because there are larger economic forces at work here that are not allowing us to prosper as much as we should be, given the amount of work that we put into the system, and given how much of our work goes to the capitalist class at the top, it makes sense that it looks like the market is shifting towards free-to-play things, or millennials aren't buying houses, or millennials aren't buying cars, or whatever it is that millennials and Gen Z is being blamed for, that's killing such and such a market. We don't have the money to afford all these big flashy things a lot of the time. If we didn't have student loan debt, if we didn't have low wages, if we didn't graduate into an economy that was constantly booming and busting and depleting our savings, if we didn't work in a system where the rent that was paid for our labor was low and the rent that we pay to live is high, constantly funneling money to people who are already rich. This system is inherently broken. And I believe that this story, and of course it started as a lighter note story, but it really kind of devolved here. Apologies. It's just, this is a microcosm of all the other problems that are wrong with society. You can see it. It's not difficult to see. And I hope by using a concrete example like the cost of video games over time, I've illustrated to you what the issues are, what we're expected to do and pay for, and why that doesn't make sense.